Covers Daily, Tuesday, February 8th. 5 days to go until the big game as we progress through Super Bowl week. Fantastic show today. Not that every show isn't fantastic, but this show going to be one to remember, I think. We've got John Sheeran from FanDuel joining just a couple of minutes from now. It's a busy week for him, obviously, working at one of the biggest sportsbook in the United States. Very curious to get his thoughts on how the Super Bowl market is shaping up and how he's dealing with all of the props. And then at 12:20, Adam Levitan from Establish the Run. I give him the gambler's compliment, which is he annoys the hell out of me, but because of how he destroys the market. So it's a very good thing when I say that. But him and the crew over there do a phenomenal job with all of the props that they send out through their Discord channel, through their subscription-based platform, through the website, through articles, through the podcasts. When they're betting, they're moving numbers. And so it'll be great to chat with him in about 20 minutes. But John is with us right now, so we'll bring him into the show and get his thoughts on Super Bowl week. Over from FanDuel HQ, no more airports, no more traveling around. You're hunkered down for the big 2 weeks?
For the next couple of days anyway, yeah, we're stuck here. This is where the magic happens, Adam.
It looks like it's bustling in the background with what does everyone have, like 6 to 8 monitors a station?
Yeah, normally about 6 or 8 monitors and a TV as well, obviously for all of the live trading that the guys do as well. So yeah, everyone well stocked up on TV screens and computer screens.
I'm curious as we get into the game. So you were on with us before the championship games, and you said the props would be out hopefully Sunday night, and certainly some of them were. And then Monday morning you had the full offering, and it just become more and more and more. How many people were setting those numbers within the team, and how does that sort of structure look like for you guys?
Yeah, the whole trading team is involved, all the guys that lead on the NFL, and then we also lean on like quants and analytics teams that we have internally, both group based and also a lot of the work we do with Numberfire as well, which is obviously under our umbrella as well. So those guys played a huge part in us being able to get the markets up very, very quickly after Sunday. And yeah, I was kind of surprised that my overpromise actually delivered. So the guys did an incredible job getting all those markets up. Long gone are the days of 10 days out, 7 days out, I think, and that's a good thing.
So how does it typically work then? So you have all these different sort of sources of information coming in. Is there like a final approval before things go live on the site, or is there like the raw numbers and then you guys add in VIG afterwards, or like what does that final step look like from the info to being up available for betting?
Yeah, I mean, everything we do is fundamentally priced to 100%, and then the guys will add the juice on top depending on what the market is and how our confidence aligns. If there are certain specific ones that we want to take an opinion versus what the numbers that have been spat out, then that's certainly something that the guys who lead on the NFL will add on at that point. But yeah, all in all, it's a pretty busy process, a pretty busy week for the guys. And like I said, they did an incredible job of getting it all up and running.
And I'm getting into the weeds here a little bit, so if you need to push back, that's fine. But like when it comes to like distributing the VIG on either side, if you guys have confidence in one side or the other, one sort of section of a multi-way market, do you distribute the VIG heavily elsewhere, or are you willing to take like more of a bigger bet on your side, or is it pretty evenly proportioned throughout?
Yeah, I mean, for the two-sided markets, obviously, we're just looking for the right number where it splits as close as we can to 100%, at 50-50 split, and then we just add the juice equally on both sides. For us, not really influencing our pricing based on what we expect volume to look like from public or from sharp bettors. That's really not something we do. Try and aim to get as close to the 100% line as we can, and charge the overround that we need to for that. For obviously the multi-way ones, it's slightly different, but it's heavily correlated obviously to the price, right? Five long shot bias rather than necessarily making picks on our side and taking more juice on certain players. That really doesn't happen.
Sure. Okay. Very good to know. I think makes sense. Start with side and total, because that's maybe where it's less to discuss than the props. Where did you guys open, and was it close to what you guys expected to be able to put up, and then where has it sort of gone from there?
Yeah, we really haven't seen a whole lot of movement. We were probably at four longer, or first certainly. Most people 4.5, I think. Our number just couldn't get that high on the game. I personally have a slightly different feel in the game, but in terms of where the number is at versus where we opened, we're exactly where we opened. We did go to 4.5 for a little while, but back to four, and pretty confident in that number as you would expect for a game like the Super Bowl.
Got to pry a little bit. You said you feel a little bit differently. You're favoring the Bengals slightly?
No, I
Or you would have gone higher?
yeah, I mean, the numbers itself, I get it, right? I understand when you make the adjustments off the postseason and where they are. This to me is, 4.5, 5 on the numbers on a spread. But I think the matchup in this spot particularly just heavily favors Los Angeles, both sides of the ball, and not by small amounts, in my opinion. I don't think this game will be close, but that's just my personal perspective. Fully supportive of the guys with the number where we are. And, if anything, we're seeing an overload on the Bengals in terms of money we're seeing. So understand the numbers for me, and an X's and O's a matchup. Old school handicap, and this looks like very good matchup for the Rams to me, certainly.
Noteworthy comment. I thought you were. I wasn't expecting Bengals, so I misread that comment initially. But that makes a ton of sense, and I would agree. From the total side, you're at 48.5. Anything noteworthy from the total side, or is this just locked in place?
Yeah, I can't really see this moving. Again, we opened it pretty much bang on where it is right now. Maybe a tiny bit higher, and saw some initial support for the under. I think is a general market. It's not just specific to FanDuel. Really good split at where we are right now. Very, very hard to see this move any more than a half a point one way or the other. I would suggest that, I can't see it getting any higher. 48.5 or 48.5, 48 flat, certainly where it'll land.
A pretty prominent book in Nevada yesterday touched 5. That was, I think, the first 5 I've seen since like some obscure openers, like way back on Sunday after the championship games. Do you think we're kind of locked in at an expensive 4 from now until kickoff, or could you actually see the Rams ticking up a little bit?
I mean, it wouldn't be unusual to see a late sharp move against a lot of public demand. And, I would certainly expect it if it got under 4 to come back towards LA, maybe on the game day. We saw it a few years ago with the Patriots and the Rams, where we saw that really sharp move for the Rams on game day, taking it from 2.5 in certain spaces to 1.5. At this number, like for us, this will be 4 or 4.5. Yeah, I think you're right. Expensive 4, flat 4.5, maybe on kickoff. For me, I'd be surprised if it lands anywhere else.
Something that we've talked about a lot on the show with different people over the last 8 or 9 days is how a lot of times each year the money line on the favorite tends to get compressed a little bit as we get closer to game time, because a lot of people that are like the dog tend to go money line on typically shorter spreads too. You see that potentially being a case where the money line trends a little bit lower just because of Cincinnati money line money coming in?
Potentially, hopefully not here. It doesn't make any sense to us, as I've said before. We're not in the business of moving lines to try and balance some of our risk. We, try and focus on what the true probability is and add the juice, as we said earlier. So I would hope that wouldn't be the case for us, but I think certainly a chance that you see that elsewhere. We have pretty high ratio for bet count on the money line for the Bengals, around 3-1 right now. On money, it's more like 60-40. But certainly have accrued decent liability. It's already a couple of $1 million. We think it'll be somewhere in the realms of 30 million come kickoff just on the money line alone. So it wouldn't surprise me at some of the other books, particularly some of the Vegas books, to see a bit of value on the Rams money line certainly come kickoff.
Incredible the amount of money that is coming in now that so many states are opened up, and I bet the handle numbers are just going to get crazy, and I'm sure the props are going to do their part of making up for that. I've got some questions about some specific ones, but I'm curious from like a 100% breakdown for total handle, when you're thinking about like full game versus props, and then I don't know if like same game parlays can be broken off, but like what's the distribution in handle sort of that you're expecting for the Super Bowl between the full game and the props?
Yeah, there's a big difference, and the question is valid. To be honest, the way that the market has grown even in the last 12 months makes it kind of very difficult to extrapolate. Like you said, same game parlay, parlays in general. trending upwards. So would expect to see continued growth in that space. And like you said, I think you see a depression from the core game. Nothing unusual, nothing groundbreaking. It's as you would expect it. Increased volume on, coin toss. Pretty incredible. People already, I think we've almost 2,500 bets on the result of the coin toss already.
2,500.
Yeah. So, you'll see a decent change in the distribution of where the volume goes through the individual markets. But what the number will be this year, we haven't necessarily put a number on it just yet.
When it comes to the extensive prop offering that you guys have, are there any that caused more discussion internally in terms of where they should be priced than others?
I don't think so. I mean, we felt pretty solid about the numbers that we hung initially, and you obviously learn where you made mistakes afterwards, rather than necessarily having debates about individual props. The touchback is obviously an obvious one. We see with the kickoff return for a touchdown, thanks to Devin Hester. They're the sort of things that you're going to accrue huge liability on, and even though they're a really tiny probability of happening, particularly in the latter case, we're aware of that, and there's certainly some additional juice you're paying to bet those markets. And I think we all know the breakdown of public versus sharp money on those markets. You really shouldn't be betting those from a probability perspective, but people enjoy the sweat of when the ball's in the air on the kickoff, and the payoff obviously should somebody else break one. So not really posting them, but certainly I think investigation of our numbers, confidence in our pricing, as prices have shifted and money has come for certain markets, definitely have caused debate since.
We had a professional bettor on yesterday that specializes primarily in props. We're having Adam Levitan on in a few minutes, who does a ton of prop work as well. The sort of common thread that we've heard from a lot of the pros that we've had on that specialize on props is that they're betting a lot less this year, and they sort of accredit that to the legalization in more states, but also the fact that props have become so popular during the regular season for NFL games and primetime games expanded, and how that has sort of allowed a lot of the errors that typically would exist to be corrected because there's more data on that. Is there truth behind that? And are you guys more confident in some of the prices that you have to put up compared to years past or other positions you've been in, just because you have so much more offering week to week and how these are going to be bet?
I think that comment is certainly fair. We've worked hard over the last multiple years, even before we were live in the US, to get better at this space. I think the growth in demand for player-led markets is pretty incredible, and for that reason, certainly there's an onus on us to get our pricing more efficient, and that's been a key area of focus for us for the last couple of years. And like I said earlier, I think we've done a really good job. We're still about the only book on game day that offer 20-cent lines on player props, and that is a reflection of our confidence in how accurately we price them. And certainly I think that has led to the props, particularly the player ones, in the Super Bowl, just becoming part of the norm for us. It's not like we look at this one day a week, a year, and forget about it the rest of the year. Continual improvements obviously lead to more efficient pricing from our perspective, at least on the Super Bowl.
In terms of any liabilities that might be building up, or like popular players that stand out, what's sort of top of list through the first 8.5 days of betting?
I think we've seen a really good spread in general. I think there's been certain areas where people have obviously focused on. I think you may have come across Cam Akers along the way, and we've definitely seen money for that sort of space. I think in general, though, and I think testament to the comments we just made around the accuracy of the price, and we've seen pretty good spread across players and individual performances for both sides. The only one that really attracted a pretty large bet was Stafford's over on passing yards from the same customer. We took 200 grand on the over there at 278 and 280. We're at 281 now, so even a bet of that size has only really moved at three yards. We were on the lower end anyway, I think, versus market to begin with. So we still have a lot of confidence in that number. Happy to kind of take that bet and only make a minor adjustment.
If you go back a handful of years, like, was it imaginable to take 200,000 on a passing player prop early on Super Bowl week? Is that common, or like how big does that? To me, it sounds like an enormous bet on a prop.
Yeah, it's a big bet, but in tandem with the increased confidence in pricing them, I think should come appetite for risk, and particularly from a bookmaker of the size of ours. Like I think you're in a position where you're going to take in the hundreds of millions of dollars on this game, and 200 grand to win, 180 isn't really that big when you think about the overall picture. And I think that's one thing we're certainly trying to be aggressive with. And I know people will point to instances where they get restricted. I think there's, almost a lack of understanding about what that is intentionally. There's not somebody here selecting every bet and deciding how much you get. It's a large degree of automation, one for another day for a discussion. But, in general, we have that increased appetite for risk and try to ensure that customers get at least a fair bet. And, where we're confident in our numbers, we should be looking to lay bets of that size and bigger, in my opinion.
So potentially more bets of the bigger stature so far, at least going to maybe potentially draw more as we get through this second week leading up to the game. Cooper Kupp is in every discussion, every media network, everywhere that you look. His prop total for receiving yards, for receptions is getting mentioned very high, north of 100, has been all week. How high is this one ultimately going to get? As Brandon's wondering, do you think we get it to 110 or higher?
Again, like I just just giving you the example with Stafford, even for a large bet, we're only moving it a tiny amount. Obviously, there's been a lot of demand for Cooper Kupp. It's not hard to envisage him having a really big game, particularly when you think about the matchup and how it's likely to play out. So, I think roughly where we are, we've already moved up a couple of yards, I believe. I'd have to go back and double check exactly the numbers, but I think it's probably unlikely to get a whole lot higher come kickoff. But there'll be a lot of demand for his over, obviously.
It's interesting to hear, because I think like this is now Super Bowl 13 or 14 for me, and there's just sort of this conditioning that all of these numbers are going to just fly up as we get throughout the week. And so it's interesting to hear like a different sentiment on that you're confident in the numbers and you're willing to take on the risk. It's very different and refreshing.
Yeah, like, I mean, we've only been 103 and a half and 104 and a half on Cooper Kupp. I've just looked as you were talking there, and right now at 104 and a half, it's 15 to 1 to the over in terms of money, 6 to 1 to the over in terms of bet count. So like all the big bettors, all the bigger stakes, even from the public, obviously they just want the over, but we've only moved it a yard. So I think that's a good illustration of maybe a change in what you can expect to see, exactly to your point.
Very interesting. Last one before we let you go. You guys at FanDuel obviously have the relationship with Pat McAfee. Last year, he broke the news about the ball used on the opening kickoff, and that's now circling around. And I looked this morning, the touchback price for the yes is down to minus 120. Last year, it was north of minus 250. So, like, we're seeing some pretty significant adjustment on the no. At what point has this gone too far? Because this seems like the big story that's now breaking everywhere.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously very interesting. I think we actually haven't spoken to Pat about it. I believe we might have been the biggest price around on it to be not to be a touchback at plus 150 when we opened it. It's been heavily touted, I think, as you may well be aware. I think we're about plus 105 right now. We made it a 37% chance, being entirely transparent, with Gay about a 65.7% chance and McPherson 60.4. So, we believe that there's a lot of profit in the bets that we're laying on it not to be a touchback. So to answer your question, I think it's probably gone too far already, but there'll be a lot of people hanging on the opening kickoff, I think.
Just a little bit away from the 60-some% on the other side you guys made. So it's fascinating how one piece of news can just swarm through the industry and move everything along. But we appreciate you all the time you've given us over the course of the playoffs leading up to it. The views on the segments that you've done are through the roof. So people really enjoy the insight, really enjoy the transparency, and hopefully we can bug you again come next season when we get rolling come September. So we really, really appreciate it.
No problem. Happy to join, Adam. Good luck and enjoy the game.
Thanks very much, John. 15 to 1 on Kupp, a kickoff prop that's fell basically off the face of the earth from pricing, some player prop movement that has been all over the place. Very interesting segment there from John to get that breakdown, but also hear how they're confident in their prices, and we may not see those movements as we have before. But somebody who's no stranger to moving markets, to moving prices, Adam Levitan from Established to Run, now with us. And Adam, on the start of the first segment, I said, this is the first time we've talked, but you get the gambler's compliment where I can say that really you just irritate the hell out of me and a lot of other bettors because of the influence that you have within the market. And like, as it's growing this year, you've had it for a number of years now, but is it at like a time surprising to you how quickly a lot of these props are moving that you're betting and giving out? We've got you on mute. It's all good. It happens. Still no testing. It's all good. Give it
Sorry
one more
about
try.
that. You got me
good.
now?
We got you. The question was maybe a bit jarring to begin with, so we got the mute button going. But has it been shocking how much influence you guys have sort of grown to and how quickly things are moving?
Yeah, I think we went into this with open eyes, knowing that the prop market is not that liquid and things are going to move quickly. And as it's not hard, obviously, for Joe or someone else to just put a bot into their thing that says if you get $5,000 worth of action on a prop, remove it, or if you get $5,000 worth of action on a prop within a minute, move the line. And that's obviously really easy for them to do and counteract. So we knew that there was going to be issues there. We've tried to implement some things to make the lines stay up longer, but yeah, I mean, it's a battle out there for sure. We encourage all our people and myself. I mean, I have money on 20 different books here in Colorado. I mean, it's crazy. If you don't live in Colorado, it's obviously not as easy, and if you're offshore or whatever, it's now also not as easy because they don't release until Thursday, Friday at times. And credit to DraftKings and FanDuel and some other places that even during the regular season, we're releasing props, Tuesday, Wednesday. And so, yeah, it's been a learning experience for sure. And the whole sports betting market, it's people don't realize like winning is only half the battle. If you can win, that's only half the battle. You also need to be able to get down.
So before we get into the game, and I'm curious, what does it look like behind the scenes for you guys? Like, how big is the team now? And when it comes to the NFL props, NBA is a completely different story. Like, that's on another level, especially this season. But when it comes to NFL, like, what does it look like on a regular weekly basis?
Yeah, so one of the main reason we wanted to jump into props is we know our people. So many of our audience wants to bet sports, and maybe DFS has gotten to be too much work for them. They have a family, whatever. I mean, betting props is easier, and we're doing all the work anyways. So the work that goes into betting props is really setting really, really good projections, and we think we have the best projections for NFL on the internet, like period. So if we have that, then it's really easy to make money betting props. We're already doing this work anyways for our core, which is DFS, which is playing fantasy. And so, in the back end, I'm looking at, and all our guys, we have 4, 5, 6 guys. I'm just looking at a page where we scrape the lines and we import our projections, and we're looking for the biggest percentage difference. And, during the regular season, sometimes there'd be 1,000 bets available, and we pick off, 10 or 15. And so obviously, like, if we only have to pick off 10 or 15 out of 1,000 that are out there, we're going to win. Like, undoubtedly, we're going to win. It's just way too much ground for the books to cover. And so, yeah, we're using that back end tool. And I think there's some, we could just release this tool to the public, right? But A, the market would get wrecked so fast. And B, I think that it's not as simple as, hey, there's a 20% edge here, we have to take this, period. Because there's some other soft skills, range of outcomes in our projection, and understanding where projections might have holes, what our assumptions are. And so if you just release it to the public and people start betting every 20% edge on a prop, I'm not sure that's enough to win. And so there has to be some understanding of football and gambling and everything else too.
How have you found sending out plays to the Discord channel in terms of people being able to get the same line? It's always going to be a battle, especially with props, but has it been effective at least leveling the playing field for subscribers?
Yeah. So at the beginning, people would have 2, 3, 4 minutes after we bet something for them to bet. It started to get in the midseason. It started to get shorter on some books, 30 seconds to a minute. On some books, credit to some books who were on it, clearly wrote some code or had someone in Discord or whatever, and you were getting 10 seconds. I also think that some of our people's audiences accounts got flagged where if they bet something, they just auto move the line. And so, the books are trying. I think some books though are welcoming, anywhere from 100 to 300 on props. And like, I get that's not a lot to a lot of people listening out there. It is a lot to a lot of people out there. And so the ability to just get 100 to 300 down on a prop, I think is reasonable. But yeah, I mean, the market moving fast, it's a struggle for sure. And I think, you know, if you got out the line we took for every bet all season, you'd have like a 21% ROI, which is absolutely ridiculous. And insane and unsustainable. If you got to half the bets and maybe you took a slightly worse number, I think you can still get off an ROI of somewhere between like 4 to 10%, which, you know, is really, really good. So we're trying to bet stuff that has a really big edge, that even if you don't get the exact line, even if you miss some of them, that you're still doing well.
Super Bowl week is massive for everyone that plays props. You guys, no exception. What does it look like so far for you guys, and you specifically, how you're looking at Rams Bengals?
Sure. So we went through our normal process, you know, and obviously like we're not going to have a ton of normal stuff for the Super Bowl because it's just one game. Normally we're looking at menus of 16 games. And so there's so much to take. Like I said, if they're going to put up 1,000, we only have to bet, and we can pick off 10 to 15 of the best ones. That's going to be just an absolute print fest. If there's only one game and everybody's eyes are on it, it's a lot harder. So we took some stuff at the beginning of the week that I thought was good, even for a regular season week. You know, the Joe Burrow under 37.5 attempts. I think that's 36.5 now. The Jamar Chase, I think some of the understanding what happens in a Super Bowl, i.e., you need the ball in Jamar Chase's hands. Our baseline rushing projection for him was 5 yards. The line was 2.5. I think that in the Super Bowl, I would personally raise our baselines for how many times they hand the ball on a jet sweep or something to Jamar Chase, because I think they'll try to get the ball in his hand. So we took over 2.5 rush yards for Jamar Chase. I think that's up to 4.5 or 5.5 now. And yeah, I mean, you know, it's smaller for those kind of props. It's bigger for the derivative props. You know, will the first play of the game be X? You know, some of the stuff that you were just talking about before. You know, will the kickoff be a touchback? And all that stuff is Super Bowl stuff. And honestly, that's not our wheelhouse. That's more for the derivative guys and guys who can just like take the line, put it into a model and understand like how many punts there will be in the game. You know, that's obviously not fantasy related. And so that's not our core wheelhouse, but I do think that like there's a big edge there for people who can price that stuff right.
So a big edge probably from the fantasy perspective would be the potential lack of both starting tight ends for the Bengals and the Rams in this game. How have you guys sort of analyze that, and what would be the sort of the outcome if both of the guys are unable to go?
Yeah, you know, CJ Uzomah says he's going to play, and I tend to believe him. Tyler Higbee has the same injury as him. He sounds more skeptical right now. We have Uzomah projected in. You know, we just put up an article where CJ Uzomah to score. This is one of the fun ones that I think I would only like take in the Super Bowl. CJ Uzomah was 44-1 on FanDuel to score 2 touchdowns. He's done it twice this year. He's 15-1 on DraftKings, I believe, to score 2 touchdowns. And so, you know, just like straight line shopping stuff on that, I think can provide a lot of value. You know, I think when you start doing target shares, if CJ Uzomah is out, Drew Sample's projected target share will be far less than Drew Sample. So you start pushing more targets to the 3 wide receivers. You start pushing more targets to the running backs. Oh, they got Uzomah. Yeah, we
24. Yeah.
Yeah, they got us on. Yeah. So things are going to move fast for sure.
Of course.
Yeah, and on the other side, the Higbee, you know, Kendall Blanton like can actually play. And so Kendall Blanton's someone we would have a reasonable projection on if he starts. Kendall Blanton, they ran plays for. I'm sure everybody remembers in the NFC Championship game, they actually ran a flea flicker into a tight end screen for Kendall Blanton. And like, man, you know, it shows that they have confidence in Kendall Blanton, that they're willing to call that play in the NFC Championship game. So I think Blanton is clearly better bets in the market than Drew Sample would be.
The Blanton one was interesting because sometimes you get the backup coming in and it's just a lack of prep or lack of knowledge from the other side. But he's now been with the Rams for a while, and it seems like they just sort of inserted him back into that role. But Higbee, very important on the blocking side. With another guy in there, does that potentially change any of the looks that the running backs might get?
Yeah, maybe. You know, I think that offensive line play and defensive line play and how it interacts is really underrated. And we have Brandon Thorne doing that for us, who's just so good at it. I think that running back yards and points, I mean, the strongest correlation is just carries. Like out of everything you could look at. Like, and it's you try to be complicated, you try to look at all this different stuff, you try to run models. I mean, the way that running backs score is through touches, period. And so if you can project the correct number of touches, and it's not that easy with the Rams, Sony versus Cam Akers, I think is a battle. Darrell Henderson might be back for a couple snaps in this game. It's not that easy, but if you can project touches from a running back, that's everything else I think is pretty noisy, is my take on running backs.
So Akers has had no shortage of touches aside from the championship game where he had the shoulder injury that took him up for a bit. But it's hard to ignore the quality of defensive opponent, especially in the running game that they've faced since he returned in week 18. Is he back? Is this the Akers that we knew from before? Or is this sort of being disguised a little bit because of the quality of opponent they played?
Yeah, I thought it was clear that they think Cam Akers is far better than Sony Michel. For a guy to come back 6 months after his Achilles and immediately, I mean, he handled 24 out of 25 running back carries in that divisional round game. Cam Akers did ahead of Sony Michel. So they clearly think that Cam Akers is the better back. Is he healthy? Do the fumbles mean anything? I'm tempted to say that it's Cam Akers' show with Sony Michel mixed in lightly. And, I get that the field isn't on, the market is not on Akers. We bet Akers over rush yards in the NFC Championship game. Didn't get there. Maybe he would have if he didn't get hurt. I don't know. But, we hardly ever bet overs. We hardly ever bet running back overs. But I'm tempted on the Cam Akers thing because I think that the field, like you said, doesn't understand what defensive matchups they were up against. Also doesn't understand that he's not going to be punished for the fumbles, I don't think. And also that he's hopefully healthy now. And so, I never want to take running back overs, but Cam Akers is one that I think is okay.
65.5, a little too high, or is that still maybe in range?
Let me see what we have here. Give me 1 second here. Yeah, we have Cam Akers for 75.6 rush yards. And so that's not a big enough edge for us typically to bet it over. But if you were stretching thin for the Super Bowl and squinting really hard saying, hey, I want to bet for the Super Bowl and root for Cam Akers to go, then maybe I could be okay with it.
Where do you stand on Cooper Kupp, who seems to be the most talked about player in the entire game by a mile with his high receiving yard total, or sort of, we'll call it a price we've seen him at, I guess, for the majority of the season?
Yeah. Every week I say like there's some on principle bets. So, like Jamar Chase, 90.5 receiving yards against the Chiefs was one. I was just like, I love Jamar Chase. I think he's awesome on principle. Like I'm not letting them get away with posting Jamar Chase 90.5 and not betting the under. Cooper Kupp is someone who it's like we bet under in week 18 because the narrative was like so strong about him breaking the record, which was ridiculous, but he had like 134.5 receiving prop line. In this game, I think it's about right. I mean, we have 105.8 receiving yards projected for Cooper Kupp. You see the line there is 104.5. From a mean median standpoint, obviously you would lean under, but I'm not taking under on Cooper Kupp. I think unlike a lot of wide receivers, Jamar Chase's mean median is way spread apart. Cooper Kupp's is closer together because he sees so much volume and his catch rate is so high. And so I'm not dancing with fire here. I'm not going to be on Cooper Kupp unders. I think Cooper Kupp has a really good game. Okay.
Where do you stand on OBJ?
I thought OBJ's looked really good. Really good.
Certainly has.
I think Van Jefferson at the start was kind of close and they were running kind of similar plays. First looks were split between Van and Odell. As it's gone on, I think Van Jefferson got a bit banged up and Odell has just played so well. And so I think the gap there is pretty wide. We have Odell for 77.4 receiving yards in this game. You see him at 61.5 there.
Getting close.
These overs, like, and this is just from a macro point on props. At the beginning of the season, I think the books we would show in our tool. I mean, we would show hundreds of unders, and now we show like almost no unders and all overs because the books understand that, and they've adjusted. And maybe we've talked about it too much and tapped the glass too much, but they understand that like the way to make money in these kind of props is almost always on being on unders. And so they've come down a lot. At some point, they're going to come down too much and we can start betting some overs. And maybe this Odell one is a good example of that, 61.5 versus 77.4 projected. But yeah, I mean, at some point, we're just going to have to start eating overs, I guess, is my point if the books are going to adjust this much.
How late in the season did that sort of occur? You don't have to go specific week, but it was like playoff time. It really started shifting.
It started, mid-season and towards the end, we were finding less and less. There was a point in week 4, 5, 6 where, I mean, we were finding like 30 really good things a week. By the time week 12, 13 came around, it was kind of a struggle to get 10 that we really felt really, really good about. And so, yeah, I mean, it would be insane for the books not to start reducing their prop lines and daring us to go over. And like I said, at some point, like we're gonna have to go over on a lot of stuff just to keep them honest, I think.
So you mentioned that the Burrow under attempts. You said Jamar Chase over on the rushing yards. You had
Yeah.
some early Cam Akers, potentially still maybe looking at it, depending on where the number settles, but you wouldn't maybe shy away from the over. Is there anything else that you guys have played so far, even if it's moved a little bit, that stands out from a player perspective?
Yeah, we took Joe Mixon under receiving yards, and we've looked at a lot. We took under 29.5. I'm not sure what it is now. Yeah, 24 and a half.
Yep.
We have 26.3 projected. I think 24.5 is a little thin. We know that Joe Mixon does not play on clear pass downs. In other words, Samaje Perine's in there on 3rd and 3 plus or 3rd and 4 plus. It's going to be Samaje Perine. 2-minute drill, it's going to be Samaje Perine, even in the Super Bowl. So that kind of is one thing on Mixon. Joe Burrow has been checking down to him a lot on base downs, but just historically speaking, running back receiving unders are the stone cold best bet that you can make in the prop market. And so anytime we show even a slight under, here we had under 29.5, we had 26.3. That's one that I want to bet. Like I just want to be on RB receiving unders when our projection is even a little bit under. And so that's one that we took. 24.5, I think it's a little thin, but again, if you want a Super Bowl sweat, I think that's one still okay.
You love running back receiving unders. Do you also like quarterback rushing unders in this game? Those two getting a lot of attention at 5.5 and 11.5 for the two of them.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the field is on, but I think the narrative that running back or quarterbacks run more in the playoffs is true. And like I haven't gone back and looked at all the data on this, and it wouldn't be that hard just to look at like a baseline for rushing projection during the regular season versus what quarterbacks do in the playoffs. But it makes sense, when the chips are down, when you're in the Super Bowl, when you're in the championship game, when you're in the playoffs, and you don't see anything downfield, like you got to get out there and run. Like this is it. And so I think we saw that a little bit with Joe Burrow. I think this line opened 10.5. I see the 12.5 now. I think it makes sense. I think it's a narrative that makes sense. And I try not to buy into narratives. And a lot of times these narratives are stuff to bet against. But I think this is one that like the public is actually right on. Like quarterbacks are likelier to run more. So I'd be afraid to go under on quarterback rushing in the Super Bowl.
Last one before we let you go. I have a sort of fresh in memory wound from the Juwan Jennings bet in the second game where Ramsey, for whatever reason, ended up on top of him the entire game. I thought that the Jennings bet was great. He was at like 4.5 yards, caught 1 for 3. You have any insight onto where Ramsey goes? Because that probably, like, who's going to be the odd man out in terms of maybe getting the softer coverage? Is it going to be Higgins? Is it going to be Boyd? Is Ramsey stuck in the slot? Like, do you have any insight to what's going to happen there?
Jalen Ramsey has not shadowed a ton this year. He has played in the box a lot. Like he's played like inside way more than I thought that he would. I know that he wants Jamar Chase. I saw his quote, if your best guy is Jamar Chase, put me on Jamar Chase. I don't know that the Rams listen to that, but that's at least something, to think about for sure. If he stays inside and he's on Tyler Boyd more, that seems like a waste of Jalen Ramsey to me, because I don't think Tyler Boyd's like a big candidate to make big plays. I think Tyler Boyd's a very good player, but he's not a candidate to like break the game like T. Higgins or Jamar Chase would. So I don't think that we can reliably latch on to what Jalen Ramsey is going to do in this game. I think we're better off just playing it straight. And as you see here, the field is understanding that T. Higgins is not that far behind Jamar Chase. I get that Jamar Chase is the superstar and, he's our number one dynasty player and he's just absolutely absurd. But the opportunity that T. Higgins has had and the way T. Higgins has played is not that far off of Jamar Chase. And you can see that in the lines here. So I think as we get closer to the game, there's a chance that Jamar Chase lines go up and maybe T. Higgins stay the same or go down, just because the public, I think, is way more familiar with Jamar Chase than they are T. Higgins. And maybe we'll get some more Ramsey news, but, they'd be crazy to like tip their hand. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. For those watching, is there a chance that there'll be more coming out in the Discord channel if we can send them your way and get them in there before Super Bowl? For sure. Yeah. And so we're looking and we released some, quote unquote fun ones like the Azoma 44-1 also and stuff like that, just for fun. But in terms of official ones, we're keep looking, and there's a chance that in island games this year, we saw some lines float up towards kickoff, public starts coming in
they're on their phone, they start betting all the overs, and we're able to find some unders. So even if you miss some of this stuff, like the Burrow pass attempts, the mix in receiving yards, I think there's a chance that by kickoff, it floats back up due to public money coming in at a higher rate than it normally would because it's the Super Bowl. So yeah, we'll be looking for stuff. If you're on establishtheRun.com, and be sure you're in the Discord. Again, that's where we talk about all the props and release all the props is in that subscriber only Discord. So find your way into there and you'll be all set.
Awesome. Adam Levitan, Established to Run. Appreciate you sparing 15 minutes on a busy Super Bowl weekend. Enjoy the big game, and hopefully the props that were sort of mashed early all come through, as I sort of expect that they will. I'm happy to have those numbers with you.
All right. Thanks for having me, and good luck on Sunday.
Awesome stuff from Adam Levitan, and be sure to check out Established to Run. They have, again, some of the best projections, and you hear him talking. It's interesting where early season, all unders, and then it warped the market so much that they had to ultimately flip. And so that was really interesting insight to where they're kind of looking at things differently. So between that and what we heard from John and how they're willing to just take on risk, an interesting show perception-wise on how I was sort of thinking about things, and then what we hear from the people who are moving the lines on both sides of the counter ultimately have perspective on too. So a lot to think about as Super Bowl week continues on. For those of you who enjoyed the show, you found the content valuable, below there's a subscribe button. We're continuing on the push to add subscribers to the channel. A lot of increase over the last couple of weeks, so people enjoying what we're doing. And tomorrow, we're going to have another fantastic show. Eric Eager is joining us from Radio Row in Los Angeles at the Super Bowl. And then we also have Suma, who's been a fan favorite each week during the playoffs. We are 500 subscribers away from the goal that we have to get to by Super Bowl. It's a long way to go, but hopefully you guys will get us there. If you're enjoying the content, please do hit subscribe. Thanks for everybody for watching today. Enjoy your Tuesday. We'll chat with you tomorrow.